What's up, everyone? We are diving back into the multiverse today for another epic, which is Naruto is dating WHO. Tenten becomes his unexpected girlfriend. Part 2. If you enjoy this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more fanfics like this. Now let's dive right into the fanfic. Confrontations with Neji and a jerk. Naruto waved goodbye to Tenten as they went their separate ways after their lunch. The sandwiches at the deli Tenten took him to were the tastiest he had ever had. They ate and talked for more than an hour before Naruto had to go. Now heading down the street, Naruto noticed something odd. The villagers were staring at him differently. Where before he had been stared at with hate, and even ignored, almost everyone was staring at him with a mix of several different emotions. Confusion, consideration, hope, acceptance even. Naruto was utterly perplexed by these actions. Little did he know that ever since he helped Tenten with Hinata, a little over 3 hours ago now, the whole village had been scrambling around trying to spread the word, resulting in crazy rumors and renditions of the story to be born. Many villagers were confused as they couldn't understand how a demon like Naruto could possibly feel so human. Others thought that it wouldn't be so bad for Naruto to learn more about relationships, to understand how it feels to be a regular person in that way. Many females approved of Naruto's handling of the situation, especially the thought of how Naruto swooped down to save his one true love from the innocent-eyed deceiver. Most people, however, just hoped that Naruto would prove that he wasn't a monster and that he can be happy in love. The only reason for this though was because if they didn't hope that, then the only other possible outcome would be Naruto going on a rampage and killing the girl he saved if she happened to reject him. Not a nice thought for anyone. Naruto, however, took all these looks warily. He could feel the shift in opinions of him, but it had happened much too fast. Something must have happened that he didn't know about, and it put him a bit on edge. Naruto picked up his pace and began running, his open jacket flying behind him like a cape as he went straight up a building's side and made his way over the rooftops. After a short trip, he leapt off the side of a building with a shout of excitement and landed right next to Yamanaka Ino, waiting for him right outside of her shop. Ino jumped back and cried out in surprise at Naruto's entrance. The boy was just laughing at Ino's expression, and was trying hard not to fall on the floor and make Ino even madder. Naruto. Ino slowly growled out. Naruto immediately straightened out in fear. Ino walked over to him, hands on his, and leaned forward into his space to glare at him right in the eye. You baka. What the hell are you thinking scaring me like that? If you remember correctly, you asked me for my help, so you better not act like that while you're with me or you'll be on your own. Got it. Naruto raised his hands defensively and backed up from Ino, hoping to survive the verbal onslaught. Alright, I get it. Sorry, I just thought it would be funny to surprise you like that. Ino crossed her arms and pouted out, annoyed. She seemed to be thinking hard, then sighed in reluctance. She began walking forward and raised her hand. Naruto flinched but felt only a light pat on his head. He opened his eyes and saw Ino walking past him, a mischievous smile on her face. Come on, Whiskers, we've got some heavy-duty shopping to do. Ino announced excitedly before charging forward, Naruto trailing behind her as he tried to catch up. Tenten ascended the stairs to her apartment floor in low spirits. She had a great time with Naruto, but coming back home reminded her of Neji. She knew Neji must be furious with her for knocking him out and leaving that note on his head. She knew she was completely justified in her actions as she was protecting her womanly honor, but she didn't believe that Neji would see it that way. He may spurn Tenten away now, then she'd never have a chance to be with him. As Tenten came onto her floor, she saw that her door was fixed on its hinges again. Neji must have actually followed the directions on her note. That was surprising. She had expected him to just leave off in a huff. Tenten brought out her keys and unlocked the door when she suddenly heard Neji's shout of pain. She pushed the door open, kunai in hand and ready to fight, only to see Neji in her small kitchen wearing her frilly pink heart apron. She got it in a bargain sale for 80% off, and swearing at the stove as he held his hand. Tenten's eyes twitched and she had to force a hand over her mouth to stop herself from laughing. Neji turned around to her and gave her an annoyed expression. Go ahead and laugh, I was only trying to cook a quick lunch for you, no thanks necessary. Tenten couldn't hold in her mirth anymore and fell to the floor, clutching her sides as she laughed with all her might. After 2 full minutes of laughing, she picked herself up and giggled her way to the kitchen. What she saw were 3 different pots, each with something inedible burnt in them. One even looked like Neji had attempted to make cereal in the pot only for it to turn into a black mush. She laughed even harder at that. Well, ha, at least you tried to make lunch, she said in between fits of giggles. Neji grumbled and headed to the sink, putting his burnt hand under the soft stream of cold water while Tenten turned off the fire on her stove. Neji took off the apron and moved to sit down at the table while Tenten got to work scraping off the burnt food and cleaning her pots. When she finished, she went into her bathroom and grabbed her first aid kit and sat across from Neji, who was eyeing the box. Give me your hand, she told him, pulling out some minor burn ointment. No, it's not that bad. I'm fine. Tenten gave him a tired look and grabbed his hand before he could pull it away. He tried to fight Tenten for it, but one look from her made him stop cold. Good, now we're getting somewhere. Tenten laid Neji's hand down and uncapped the ointment. Can you just get it over with? Neji asked, trying his best to sound impatient instead of nervous. Tenten grinned and gave Neji an amused grin. Why, is the Whittle Hyuga afraid of some medicine? Neji blushed and glared at Tenten, who laughed it off. She scooped some ointment and lightly began to dab it on Neji's hand, working it until it was a clear gel. There, all done. Now isn't that better? Tenten asked after bandaging the hand. Neji grumbled a thanks and rubbed his hand. So why were you cooking for me anyways, Neji? Neji's face turned red and he looked away from Tenten. Just as an apology, no more. I acted in an inappropriate manner earlier and so wish to say I'm sorry. He droned out as if he had practiced what to say, which he had. Tenten blushed and tried to change the subject. Well, thank you, but I wouldn't have eaten anyway. I had a meeting earlier that I missed and decided to grab lunch with a friend. A friend? Neji asked, not missing the hesitation in Tenten's answer. Who? I thought Lee was still in the hospital. Again, Tenten felt a sudden need to change topics. Did you know that your cousin is crazy? Thankfully it worked. Hinata, why do you say that? Tenten sighed in relief and shrugged her shoulders. Well, as I was trying to go to my meeting, I was attacked by her out of the blue. It's her reason I was late to my meeting in the first place. But you are one of her only friends, why would she attack you? Tenten shook her head as if lost for words. I don't know, she was just spouting off some nonsense that I couldn't even make out. Now that I think about it, she might have been drunk. Tenten added. Neji looked over at Tenten bewildered and thought over this new development. He could only think of one reason why Hinata would attack Tenten, and he knew that, if pushed to it, Hinata would act to ensure nothing was in her way. That must mean that Tenten was with Naruto again and Hinata saw it. Tenten, what is your relationship with Naruto Uzumaki? Neji suddenly asked, straight face and all. Tenten blinked in surprise before shouting. What? Alright Whiskers, you've been in there for 10 minutes, you must be done by now, so come out. Ino crossed her arms as Naruto whined from behind the curtain. No, it looks stupid, just hand me something new. Ino furrowed her eyebrows in frustration and growled. Naruto, come out now or so help me, I'll go in there and drag you out even if your butt is gnawed. Remember, shame is good when shopping. Shame tells you that you need to try on something else. So come out and be ashamed like a man. Naruto glared at the curtain since he couldn't glare at Ino. Ino, let me tell you something. I feel no shame. It is impossible for me. In my body, where the shame gland should be, there's a second awesome gland. Ino stared at the curtain for a few seconds before she broke out into laughter at the stupid joke. Naruto, just get out here, she said through the laughs. Okay, I'm coming. Naruto grumbled some more before pulling back the curtain and stepping in front of Ino. He was dressed in a high-collared one-piece gray outfit with no sleeves and the pants portion of the outfit being cut off at the knee. I was visibly divided by an oversized weapons pouch that acted like a belt. Naruto also had a few accessories Ino helped him pick out for him. He wore a pair of forearm protectors and shin guards and his hitai was attached to his left bicep. You look great, Ino said at the scowling Naruto. What don't you like about it? Well, for one thing, it has absolutely no orange. I can't even, and besides not having orange, what's with the weapons pouch? You can keep a lot more weapons on you now, Ino said impassively. Ignoring the response, Naruto just went on. That's not even the biggest issue though. The worst thing about this damn thing is that it looks like something Sasuke would wear. It even has the abnormally high gravity defying collar. Ino huffed and glared at Naruto. Well, sorry, I'm not used to shopping for boys, you know. The least you could do is cut me some slack, I'm trying my best. Naruto sighed and palmed his face. She was right, of course he shouldn't be so harsh with her. I'm sorry Ino, I didn't mean to yell at you. This stuff just isn't what I'm used to, okay? Ino sighed and nodded her head. I get it. We'll just have to keep looking, I guess. Hey, at least this one was better than the last outfit you picked. It was basically civilian clothing. Well, that was just to get some laughs, Naruto. Go back in and undress while I get something new for you. Naruto nodded and pulled the curtain around again. He looked down at his current clothes and grabbed his orange jacket. He wished he could keep wearing it, but the more he moved around in it, the more the seam in the arms broke. He cursed Sasuke for destroying this jacket. His trademark look, the jacket old man Hokage had given him. Naruto's eyes saddened at the memory and he placed his hand on the center of the jacket. Just then he heard Ino calling his name. Naruto here, I think you'll like this. Oh, and hand me your jacket, she said as she dropped the clothes onto the floor and extended her arm inside of the curtain. Naruto picked the clothes up and eyed her hand. Why do you want the jacket? He asked warily. Ino huffed, closing and opening her hand. Please just trust me, Naruto. I promise nothing bad will happen. Naruto stared at his jacket longingly, then handed it to Ino. Ino rushed away and Naruto just stared straight at the curtain for some time. Finally he broke out of his stupor and began to change out of his one piece and into the clothes Ino had given him. He stared at the pants then smiled, pulling them on. They were mostly a dark orange color with lots of red cargo pockets all along them, along with 2 red straps that hung at the sides. It widened out as it went down his leg, but once it hit mid-shin it began to close off, leaving only his ankles bare. It was lightweight and flexible enough for him to move however he wanted, and best of all, it was orange. These were definitely a keeper. Next, Naruto pulled on a long-sleeved sweatshirt. It was black and had a dark blue flame pattern going from the bottom, up his sides, and down the length of his sleeves. The material was very lightweight and breathable, which made Naruto wonder why it was long-sleeved until he saw the tag say that it was a chakra shirt. Grinning, Naruto channeled chakra into the shirt and it instantly became much harder. He raised his left arm and sliced it with a kunai grabbed from his pouch. However, when he investigated the cut, he found that there was no tear in the material and his body didn't get a scratch. He had felt the pressure of the knife, but no steel had touched his body. Wow. He moved his arms around a bit and checked his movements by doing a basic taijutsu stance. He waved his arms in circles, punched the air rapidly. He even tested it out without chakra flowing through it to ensure that even when the shirt was slack it wouldn't snag or tear. Content with the shirt, Naruto smiled brightly and decided to thank Ino profusely. Naruto, are you still in there? You didn't ditch me, did you? Naruto smiled and walked out of the changing booth. No, of course not, I was just getting used to this. When Naruto came out, Ino looked him over with an astonished gaze before whistling in appreciation. Damn, I am good, she announced, grinning. Naruto noticed that she was hiding something behind her back and tried to peer over her shoulder. Hey, what is that, Ino? Naruto asked. Ino backed away with a smile. Well, you were telling me how much you would miss your jacket the Hokage got you and that you wished there was some way you could still keep it around, so I kinda got an idea about that. Here. Ino then pulled something folded up and orange from behind her back and presented it to Naruto, blushing a little. Slowly, Naruto grabbed it and lifted it up. It unfolded and immediately Naruto was torn with how to feel. One part of Naruto felt incredible relief, another felt like crying out in joy to the heavens, and another still wanted to hug Ino for such an incredible gift. Naruto stared at what had been his jacket. It was now sleeveless, cutting off just past the shoulder and expertly sewn together. The left shoulder even had his swirl patch placed and secured on it. What had first been light blue stripes had been transformed into a dirty dark blue color by Sasuke's fireball, had now been retransformed into a nice solid deep blue color that looked amazing. The orange color, which had turned burnt orange due to aforementioned fireball, had also been fixed, making it seem a more natural jacket color as well as having no noticeable burn marks on the clothing. Naruto hesitantly put it on over his current clothes and turned to look at himself in the mirror. He had noticed that among other things, he had a new zipper, but the way it looked open had him astonished. He looked awesome. Ino came up behind him and put a hand on his shoulder. Well, what do you think, Naruto? She asked. Naruto smiled and before he could really think on it he hugged Ino. Ino stood stock still, shocked at Naruto's actions, then eased into the hug. Thank you, Ino. This is the nicest thing anyone has ever done for me, Naruto said, his voice cracking a bit, cluing Ino in on just how sincere he was being. Ino smiled to herself and eased out of the hug before gathering 3 extra sets of Naruto's outfit while he folded up the clothes he had worn into the store. As they started to make their way to the counter, Naruto paused and turned to Ino. Ino, how'd you turn my jacket into this vest? Well, I know this store really well cause one of my mom's friends is a seamstress here. This place rarely orders clothes, they prefer to make them here. So I just took the jacket to her and she was more than happy to help. Nodding at having his question answered, Naruto thought for a moment before speaking again. Hey, this vest, it's really great and stuff, so I wanna pay you back a bit. Do you want something from here? I'll pay. Ino stopped and a grin spread over her face. Wait here, I found the cutest outfit while looking for yours. She handed Naruto his clothes before dashing off around then store as a purple blur. 20 seconds later, Ino was standing in front of Naruto again in a new outfit. She was wearing long black spandex pants not unlike Sakura's that stopped just below the middle of her shin. Over that she wore a new purple skirt, the front of which reaching her knees, the back extending down her whole leg to her ankles, and the sides split open from just below the waist. She had what appeared to be a long-sleeved version of her purple tank top over which she had a slightly darker purple vest with a hood that seemed to be made of the same material as Naruto's chakra shirt. To finish off the new look, she had on a pair of black fingerless gloves. Naruto whistled in awe. That was fast. How'd you do that? Practice, she said with a smile. Cool, huh? I've been hearing about a few of the others in our year starting to take being a ninja more seriously, so I need to start working too, and these new clothes should help emphasize that. Naruto rolled his eyes with a chuckle. Right, you just wanted some new clothes, he said, not really buying what he was hearing. Ino only stuck out her tongue before grabbing 3 more pairs of her outfit before looking at the whole pile of clothes uncertainly. Hey, are you sure you can afford all of this? I guess I could buy my stuff later if not. Naruto shook his head and reached into his new vest for Gama-chan. I'm completely sure. Ero-sennin made sure to pay me back all my money after finding Ba-chan, and besides I've got more than enough money with the shinobi discount. When the two reached the register, the cashier looked at them with a harsh glare. He rung them up and gave them their total. 571 ryo is your total. How will you be paying, cash or check? What? There's no way that it can be that much. Naruto shouted. What about our shinobi 30% discount? It's there for her clothes, but as for you, I would sooner commit suicide than acknowledge you as a shinobi. The man then spat on Naruto's face only for Ino to slap in disgust. How dare you? He's a shinobi who deserves your respect like any other. You can't treat him like this. I can and I will, girly. I don't see anyone here telling me otherwise. The man said smugly. But still, even without the discount you more than doubled the price of his stuff. It should be more like 240 ryo. Ino tried to reason. Listen here, it's my shop, I make the rules, and if I want to charge him so much then it's my business, got it? The man shouted. Naruto growled and stepped in front of Ino. Hey, don't yell at her like that. If you're going to yell at someone, yell at me. Leave her out of this. The man was quick to comply with Naruto's demands and soon the two were arguing, calling each other names, and starting to get ready to fight. As they were arguing, Ino slipped into the back, and a few minutes later came out with a force of seamstresses behind her. What's going on here? The woman that was directly behind Ino shouted out. The two males turned to her, one with a look of confusion and the other a look of anger. This is none of your business, Sabama, go back to work. I don't think so. According to this young lady, not only are you refusing proper respect towards a shinobi, who would protect you with his life might I add, but you are grossly overcharging him as well. I said this doesn't concern you. Now go back to your workstations or else. The owner shouted at her, his patience all but gone. No, you listen or else. Sabama snarled at the man, marching up to him and jabbing his chest with her finger. We refuse to work in a place that bullies children, no matter what you may think they are. So here's how it's going to go. You will apologize to these kids, and yes, especially to the boy. You will give them a very generous 70% discount for your harassment towards them, and you will never bother them again should they even choose to return, otherwise the others and I will leave and make you penniless. You're bluffing. You'd be out of a job. Just try us. Sabama said dangerously, her eyes narrowed in challenge. They stood that way for 3 minutes before the man backed off. Fine. I'm sorry. Your total is now 74 ryo. Happy now? He said stubbornly to Sabama. It's a start. Well, that was enough for now, girls, let's get back to work. Oh, and Ino, don't forget to tell your mother that card night is at Anzu's house this week, okay? Got it. Ino called back, making the symbol for okay. Just as Naruto finished paying, Ino grabbed his arm and dragged him and the clothes out of the store. Come on, Whiskers, let's get out of here. Once they were outside, Naruto started hopping around in excitement, while Ino laughed like crazy as she sealed the clothes away. Ino, that was awesome. That was awesome. There's no other word for it. Ino scratched her chin, grinning all the while. Heh heh, yeah, I was pretty awesome, but awesome stuff always happens around Ino Yamanaka. Man, I never got such a great deal. I'm gonna go test these new clothes out right now. Wanna come? Naruto asked the blonde girl hopefully. Ino paused and began thinking it over. Training? I don't know. Well, suddenly a loud bellow was heard throughout Konoha, shocking the two blondes. Naruto! The voice cried, sending a chill down said boy's spine in pure terror. Oh shit. No. What's your relationship with Naruto Uzumaki? Neji repeated once Tenten righted herself back into her chair. She had fallen backwards in shock. What are you talking about, Neji? Nothing's going on between me and Naruto. She said shakily. Tenten's left foot began to fidget and Neji took careful notice. Are you sure, Tenten? He asked. Of course. Why would I be doing something with him? She said half-heartedly, trying to defend herself. I see, so you are not dating him? Neji asked levelly. Tenten nearly fell out of her seat again. The question was just so unexpected and strange, she would have never in a million years have considered Neji asking that question. Because, Neji continued, I was out last night with Hinata-sama and we saw you and the Uzumaki eating some ramen together. Out of sheer coincidence, as we were passing by, we heard him say you two were on a date. What? That's what this is about. Neji, yes, Naruto and I were eating together and yes, he said it was a date, but I want you to stop seeing him, Neji interrupted smoothly. You have to understand that we, what? What did you just say? I said I would like for you to stay away from Naruto Uzumaki. Neji said with an impassive tone. Tenten stared at Neji for a long moment, trying to discern the reason for his request, and after a while just chalked it up to him not liking Naruto. She thought it over and decided that if Neji and Naruto didn't get along, there was nothing she could do about it. Deciding that she would rather be on Neji's good side, Tenten was about to agree when a memory suddenly passed through her mind. Naruto, holding his sandwich to his mouth and looking at Tenten before putting it down and smiling at her. Him saying, this is nice, Tenten, I've never done this before. I've never just sat down and had lunch with a friend. Thank you. Tenten blinked and shook her head. Now was not the time to be second-guessing between her friends and the boy she wanted to be with. Yet, the memories just kept coming. Years. Naruto cried out before breaking down and sobbing into his hands. Tenten teared up and moved closer. She grabbed Naruto and pulled him into a hug where he collapsed and started to cry in her stomach. She cried with him, all the while squeezing him as tight as she could. Tenten stared forward at Neji, who was beginning to lose his patience with the girl. Well? He asked, annoyed. Tenten's eyes shifted a bit and a new memory emerged. It's fangirls like you that give real kunoichi like me a bad name. Tenten yelled at Sakura. Tenten looked herself over before looking back down to the table. No, she said quietly. I'm sorry, Neji asked, taken back by the response. Naruto dragging Tenten through the streets of Konoha with a wide grin on his face as she laughed, feeling excited. I said no, Tenten said more firmly. Naruto, be quiet. You're my friend, I'm not ashamed of you or something. Tenten said. Why not? Tenten, he's an annoyingly loud, obnoxious person. Why won't you stay away from him? You're good people, Tenten, and I hope we could be friends. Naruto said, smiling at Tenten in his battered and bandaged form. Because he's my friend. I'm not going to abandon him too, Neji. Tenten said, her eyes fierce. Neji blinked in surprise, then sneered. Ah, so that's how it is. You're not dating him, you're simply hanging around him out of pity. Good. That's how people like him should be treated. I do not pity Naruto. Tenten yelled, rising up from her chair. Besides, what do you care? So what if I were dating him? Neji flustered at Tenten's reaction and hastily came up with an excuse. Well, that Uzumaki is very strange and I don't fully trust him around you. He could overpower you and do something if he wanted to. I'm trying to look out for you. Well, I don't need protection, Neji, I can handle myself just fine. You should know that, Tenten said, calming down a bit. She was angry with the Hyuga, but at least he seemed to want the best for her. You're right, Neji said, nodding his head. I shouldn't have underestimated you. You're my teammate after all. It's not like such trash as him could do anything anyway. Neji said with a sneer towards Tenten. So he's trash now? Tenten asked, her anger rising again. No, he's worse than trash. He's a hot-headed, idiotic, pathetic piece of garbage who has no business with anyone, especially you. Tenten's anger at the dark-haired boy became larger than she ever thought possible. How dare he talk that way about someone, let alone Naruto? He knew nothing about her new friend, nothing about the pain and suffering he went through. Neji's life might as well have been a festival when compared to Naruto. Get the hell out of my home, Neji. Tenten snarled, her womanly anger getting the best of her. What? Neji said in surprise at the fury behind Tenten's words. Never before had he heard her speak like that to him, and it unnerved the Hyuga quite a bit. Tenten moved around her table and grabbed hold of Neji's chair before she pulled it right out from under him. Neji fell flat on his ass in surprise at the abrupt show of disrespect towards him. He rose up in anger and turned towards Tenten, ready to put her in her place, but was met with a pair of the fiercest eyes he had ever seen, seething with nothing but hatred for him at the moment. I will not stand for you insulting Naruto in my home. So get the hell out of here before I force you out that door with a dozen kunai in your ass. I don't care where you go or what you do so long as you just leave here now. Tenten, get a hold of yourself. You're yelling like a maniac over that stupid. Don't you dare finish that thought. Tenten roared in warning. You will stop degrading him this instant. He is one of the best people I know, and he's gone through a hell of a lot more than you can even imagine. You see yourself as some tragic hero that has all this justified hate, but you are so wrong. If anything, he should hate everyone more than you hate your clan from all that he's gone through, but he just keeps fighting on. And don't think for a second that I'm pitying him. If anything, I should pity you. Or have you so conveniently forgotten that that piece of trash handed your ass to you? With a speech, might I add. Neji's eyes were widened in surprise and anger. He turned to leave, gaining a satisfied grunt from Tenten, but as he opened the door he paused, turning towards the girl. You're deluding yourself and him by acting this way. In the end, he'll just be hurt by your eventual departure and you'll just return to normal. It is simply your fate. I was just trying to speed it up. You should just hurry up and get this over with. Tenten kicked Neji's ass, pushing him out of her doorway and slammed the door right on him, making him yelp in pain. Gah, you crazy girl, he shouted, without thinking due to the pain in his rear. The door immediately opened and Neji felt a chill go down his spine that should never be made fun of. It was the chill every man gets when he realizes he just said something so damaging to his health. The chill where he knows that a particular woman is going to get you, take away your manhood, then slowly kill you if you don't run as fast as you can. Without a moment to lose, Neji leapt over the railing in front of Tenten's door and hightailed it out of there, being able to dodge the sharp metal objects of death thrown at him purely by instinct. If one were to ask you to describe Ayame Ichiraku, you would likely say that she was a sweet, thoughtful, caring, smart, and all-around nice young woman. And you would be right. However, at this moment Ayame is none of those things. No, she is a pissed-off bundle of nervousness. The reason is because Ayame just learned something very disheartening. It started with Ayame noticing that Naruto hadn't come in for lunch that day. She asked her father if he knew anything about it, only to find that her father knew nothing. She was then shocked as her father began telling her news of how last night, while she was at home studying for a big test she was having this morning for school, Naruto had come in with a girl. On a date. Ayame was flabbergasted. Naruto, sweet, lovable, always putting other before himself, Naruto had gotten a date. Some girl had actually let her Naruto take her out on a date, to her family's ramen bar no less, and she couldn't even be there to size the girl up. Ayame had had a crush on Naruto for years now. They had practically grown up together, the boy being only a year younger than her, and had shared so many memories. She was proud to call herself his first friend, his first hug, his first listening ear, his first partner in crime, and even his first kiss. Though of course he dismissed it as just the two of them being kids and not really knowing the significance of the act, she could still remember the day that she first started to like the boy. Naruto and Ayame were just hanging around the ramen bar as was their routine. Tsuki had left the bar earlier to supervise one of his students who was attempting to join one of Konoha's most illustrious restaurants, leaving the 7- and 8-year-old alone. I'm hungry, Naruto suddenly said, looking away from his drawing toward the girl on his right. Ayame looked up from her own work of art, a cute field of animals with Naruto for eyes, and turned towards the boy. So, Ayame said, not really knowing how to respond to that statement. Naruto slumped forward until his whole upper body was lying flat against the counter. So I'm hungry. Do you think you could make me some ramen? He asked, figuring that if her dad could make awesome ramen then surely his daughter could as well. Ayame however turned bright red and looked down. She was really nervous. She tried to cook ramen several times before, her dad trying to teach her about the family business and all, but she always messed it up. She was nowhere near a good cook, and everyone knew it. Or at least the kids in her school knew it. Whenever they had a cooking project everyone would stay away from Ayame's food as it had accidentally caused one boy to end up with a severe case of the runs. Thus she got the nickname, Iki Ayame. I don't know Naruto. I think you should wait for my daddy to get here. She said hoping that the boy would agree. But that could take forever. Naruto groaned. Can't you please cook me something Ayame-chan? Please. The boy begged on his knees. Ayame could only turn redder in the face but after several attempts to dissuade the blonde from her cooking, none of which succeeded, she finally relented and went behind the counter to the kitchen. She set up everything just like how her daddy had taught her, getting a stool and placing it right in front of the stove and counter so she could reach everything. 15 minutes later Ayame was staring at a dark and disgusting looking miso ramen. She tasted the ramen to see if it was any good and immediately felt like throwing up. Frowning in distress over having failed at making ramen again, after all she was only 8 years old, Ayame turned toward the counter where Naruto was smiling happily at her, enjoying how she looked as she worked. Naruto, I don't think you'd want this. We should just wait for my dad to get back. She said sadly, trying to move the pot she made the ramen in over to the sink. Naruto wasn't having any of that though. Ayame-chan, I'm really hungry. Like really hungry. Please, can I just have that ramen you made? Ayame swallowed in nervousness and looked at Naruto before looking back at her mess of ramen and shaking her head. No, you don't want this Naruto. It's nothing but trash. She was about to throw it out when Naruto hopped over the counter and grabbed the pot out of her hands. Ayame shrieked as she lost her balance and nearly fell off her stool but Naruto was easily able to set her standing straight. As Ayame regained her balance she saw Naruto lift the pot of ramen to his mouth. No Naruto, don't eat that. She cried out, but it was too late. The blonde boy gulped down a mouthful of broth and noodles before his eyes widened. He lowered the pot and started choking in disgust at the foul taste of the ramen. Ayame only watched in slight horror as her friend seemed to be dying from her food. Oh man, Naruto shouted suddenly, shaking his head and turning to Ayame. Ayame-chan, I'm sorry, but that ramen tastes nasty. He said, shaking his head again as a shiver went down his spine. Ayame frowned at her friend's words and looked down in embarrassment and shame. She knew that he wouldn't like it, but she still hoped that he would at least be gentle with his words. She nearly started to tear up when she heard the distinct sound of slurping again. Startled, she looked up and saw Naruto as he started chugging down the nasty ramen again. Naruto, what are you doing? That ramen's garbage, let me throw it out. She said, hopping off the stool and heading towards Naruto. Naruto moved away from her though and lowered the pot again with a shiver at the nastiness. Naruto shook his head and smiled at Ayame, stunning her a bit. No way Ayame-chan. There's no way that this is going into the garbage, no matter how nasty it tastes. You made this ramen for me, and no one else has ever done something like that for me before so I'm going to finish it no matter what. And to emphasize his point he downed the rest of the ramen in one big gulp. Ayame couldn't tear her eyes away from the sight of Naruto finishing off her horrible ramen. She was absolutely touched by the boy's commitment to her that he would willingly eat her cooking. Even when he fell to the floor clutching his stomach, he did so with a smile and a few laughs. Ayame rushed and grabbed him a glass of water that he gratefully drank down. You dummy, you should have just thrown it out. She said as Naruto groaned in pain. He laughed at her comment however. Never Ayame-chan. So long as you make it I will always eat your food. At that moment Naruto's stomach chose to make a horribly painful sound and Naruto clutched his stomach harder. Although, I wouldn't mind if the food started tasting a bit better, you know. He said, chuckling a bit. Ayame only smiled at him and hugged him before joining in with his laughter. And at that moment she knew that Naruto was something special to her. Sure Baka, sure. She knew, even back then, that Naruto was special, that he was an irreplaceable part of her life, and that she wanted him all to herself. Unfortunately for her however, that year when Naruto went back to the ninja academy he switched classes and ended up meeting her. Sakura was Ayame's biggest challenge ever as Naruto had fallen head over heels for her, or at least fallen as hard as a 7-year-old can. Either way before she knew it all Naruto would talk about was Sakura-chan this and ninja stuff that. He became more busy and started having less time to hang around and play with her. They would occasionally skip class together though, and before she knew it, the only times she would see Naruto was when he came in for his daily lunch or, if she was lucky, dinner. She missed Naruto terribly, and though she would act as pleasant as she could around him, she could never bring herself to openly talk to him about her feelings. And look where that got her. Some other girl had come by and gotten to Naruto. And it wasn't even Haruno or that Hyuga chick. It was this no-name, come out of nowhere girl named Tenten. And worse yet, it didn't seem to have been just a one-night date thing. From the rumors she had started to hear, it sounded like those two were in some sort of serious relationship. Ayame was heartbroken, but she couldn't just do nothing anymore. She'd loved Naruto for the longest time. She knew him best. She had spent the most time with him. Hell, she was his freaking childhood friend, and everyone knew that in romances the childhood friend always became something more. All these years she had a leg up on any competition, and she would have been able to make Naruto hers easily. Now she was in last place. Well, no more. From that day forward, Ayame Ichiraku was putting her name in the race for the love of Naruto Uzumaki. Just you wait, Naruto-kun. I'll show you that I deserve to be with you the most, she said, just out of the range of her father's hearing. And this ramen will be the start of it. She carefully put the finishing touches onto her ramen and smiled in pride. Her deluxe love potion, ramen, was sure to bridge the gap that had appeared between her and Naruto and start them on the right path towards Maria. She meant relationship. Now all she needed was to add just a little bit of the secret ingredient. She grabbed the nearby bowl with a nicely ground powder in it and grabbed just a pinch, raising it above the ramen. Naruto. She suddenly heard a voice bellow, scaring her and causing her to drop the whole bowl of powder into the pot of ramen she was making. Her eyes widened and she cried out in worry as she saw the ramen turn a sickly pale color. No, now it's ruined, she cried before slumping her head and pouring the ramen broth down the sink, the noodles going into the trash. As she silently started to try and make a new batch, she silently prayed that whoever it was that shouted out Naruto's name and caused her to mess up her ramen would suffer, and suffer dearly. Neji was finally able to get away from Tenten in the Konoha market square. He sighed and recomposed himself into the proper image that a Hyuga should have. He began making his way back home when he noticed many people turning to look at him and others who were pointing him out to their friends. Good, he thought as he walked. This is how the Hyuga should be seen, with everyone in awe of us and greetna, huh? Look, there's one of those Hyuga. Let's go away. Neji stopped in his tracks and looked over at those who were talking. Yeah, let's. I still can't believe it about them. I would have never thought that their clan's heiress would be like that. So this has to do with Hinata. Why am I not surprised? Hey, what are you saying about the Hyuga? Neji called at the two women. The froze in fear and turned to Neji. Nothing at all. The braver of the two said. Number. Neji said menacingly. You said something about our heiress. What was it? Well, haven't you heard? She wanted that Uzumaki kid and began attacking this Kunoichi who Uzumaki was in love with. It was a supposedly fierce battle over the love of the boy, but just as the heiress committed a dirty trick and was about to strike down the Kunoichi, Uzumaki rushed in and saved his beloved. The first woman said. Then he made this grand speech about how he would die for his friends and all this stuff about precious people, and that she had no claim to him. The heiress broke down in defeat after hearing that an Uzumaki decided that his beloved would be much safer if he wasn't in her life, so he ran off in an attempt to distance herself from him, but she didn't care about the danger because she loved him so much and so chased after him. The second woman continued. Then both women started talking in unison, slightly creeping Neji out. From what we've heard, they were last seen by a shinobi that was following them. They were on this rooftop in each other's embrace as they cried together. It's just so romantic, isn't it? They finished. Neji blinked and his face began to twitch. Naruto saved Tenten. He saved her from Hinata. Tenten and Naruto cried together as they were holding each other. Naruto loved Tenten. Ten loved Naruto. A feral growl escaped Neji's lips as he ran in search of the blonde-haired boy in order to beat his ass. He ran instead into his spandex-wearing sensei. Neji, why are you running around with such an unyouthful face? Guy asked. Neji, who was not in the mood, quickly sidestepped him and continued to run over, calling over his shoulder to Guy. Why don't you ask around about Tenten? Confused as to why his pupil would act in such a way, Guy asked the next person he met if they had any youthful news about his female student. The story he heard sent him into a joyous frenzy. Hooray, for Tenten has found a most youth-filled person whom she can be happy with. He must congratulate the boy. And so he bellowed to the clouds for the whole village to hear him and his joy directed at the youthful boy. Naruto. It's Guy. Naruto cried out, causing Ino to turn and look at the now frantic boy. What's the big deal? Sure, he's eccentric, but I heard Guy-sensei was a nice person. Why are you freaking out? Naruto turned to Ino and started waving his arms erratically. You don't understand. He's too nice. I once asked him if we could train together. I ended up puking to within an inch of my life. On the warm-up, he's tried dragging me to every training session since. We need to go now before he finds me. Naruto, don't you think you're overreacting? Ino said, placing her hands on his. Naruto looked at her incredulously. Overreacting? He spun around and looked for a shinobi. Spotting one, he yelled towards him. Hey, you on the roof. Guy-sensei sent me to find you. He wants to train with you. The shinobi immediately shrieked in horror and ran for his life in the opposite direction, yelling back at Naruto. No, please, never again. No, someone protect me. I can't see that monster again. I don't want to die. Mumi. Naruto then turned back towards Ino, who was slack-jawed. Now do you think I was overreacting? Naruto asked, and Ino shook her head. Come on, we need to go before he fi. Aha, there you are. Guy screamed, shocking the blondes. Naruto and Ino didn't hear the exclamation. They felt it. The blondes made out a dust cloud about 10 blocks down. Guy apparently has good eyesight. Though he must be colorblind, before as one they screamed and started running away from it as fast as they could. They rounded every corner they came across, went through every alley they found, and went over every barricade they could in hopes of losing the man. Hey, Naruto panted out as he and Ino rounded another corner. What? Ino asked, nearly out of breath from running at her top speed for over 5 minutes. Isn't Guy-sensei supposed to be like, really fast? He asked between breaths. What kind of stupid question is that? Ino yelled, not having any patience left. It's just that he's faster than Bushy Brow's right. Neither of us is faster than him, and he would have reached us a long time ago. So how has Guy not caught us? Ino blinked and the blondes looked at each other. With a nod they spun around and skid to a stop. No one was chasing them anymore. Ino dropped to her knees in relief and exhaustion. Oh, thank Kami. I didn't know for how much longer I could have run. She groaned as she rubbed her now sore legs. Naruto chuckled a bit before sighing and looking towards the sky in relief. Yeah, I can't believe we actually lost High. Naruto cut himself off as a large shadow leapt off a roof and blocked out the sun. Naruto. The shadow. Guy, shouted, causing Naruto to nearly shit his new shorts in fear. Swiftly and in one fluid motion, Naruto leapt towards Ino, grabbed her, rolled them over onto his feet, made sure Ino was secured in his arms bridal style, and sped off down the street. This all happened too fast for Ino to process though. Naruto, what the foo, she started yelling before hearing the ground cracking behind them. Turning, she saw Guy rise onto his feet from his poor landing and take off running after them. Oh shit. Go faster. She screamed in terror. Naruto pounded his feet one in front of the other as fast as he could before inspiration struck him. He flipped Ino onto his back and made a hand sign. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. A gigantic cloud of smoke erupted in the crowded street the blondes had fled to, engulfing the masses and hiding the two. Then as the clouds began to fade, dozens upon dozens of Narutos and Inos jumped out and started to run around in all types of different directions. The jutsu had the intended effect of Guy stopping dead in confusion. Run away! A Naruto shouted as if a battle cry before all the Inos hopped onto a Naruto and the duos started to jump off into the streets of Konoha. Guy's stupefied expression went away, replaced by a grin of challenge and a hearty laugh. Ha ha ha, alright, a most youthful chase to find the one who's stolen Tenten's heart. Let us go. Suddenly Guy disappeared and 3 clone teams poofed away. Guy continued to attack the legion of clones with his super speed and minuscule injections of chakra, making them explode harmlessly. Naruto and Ino were long gone by then, however. As the blondes were hidden in the cloud of smoke that resulted from the Kage Bunshin, he and Ino had transformed themselves to look like innocent ninjas that were just going on their own way. Once they were at a safe distance the other side of the village, the two slumped down onto the side of a wall on a building in an empty street. There wasn't a soul in sight, meaning wherever they were, Guy was sure to not look for them here. Out of curiosity, Naruto looked up to see just which building they were at and nearly choked. They were right outside Jiraiya's favorite brothel. You okay, Naruto? Ino asked obliviously as Naruto began sweating. Why yeah, Naruto said, thinking furiously. How didn't he recognize the streets? He had to move before the old perv happened to come out. Luckily for him though, Jiraiya's favorite brothel, Pleasure Full for anyone who's curious, was just 2 small blocks down from his Nei-chan's job. Ino wouldn't like going there, but at least they'd be safe from both Guy and Jiraiya. Come on, we've got to move, we're sitting ducks out here. I know a place down the street we could hide out in. Ino whined and slumped her body more against the wall. I can't do it, Naruto. My legs are like jello. Naruto looked around for any indication of the white-haired perv before kneeling in front of Ino. Fine, I'll carry you then, I just really want to get out of here. Ino got red in the face and sat back up with a stern look in her eyes. No way, I'm not letting you hold me like some sort of pervert. Shish, quiet down. Naruto hushed out in fear. Just get on my back and I'll take you to your home, okay? Ino pouted for a bit before she decided that she'd prefer to be on her soft bed than the hard ground. Besides, she didn't want to risk Guy finding her. Ino shuffled close to Naruto's back and was about to wrap her arms around him when she heard someone laughing. Ho ho ho. Naruto, you sly dog, I didn't know you had a girlfriend. And a nice young blonde one at that. Oh, I'm so proud of you. It's like you finally started to take my teachings to heart. Jiraiya shouted from atop the roof. Ga, Ero Sennin. Naruto cried out, falling forward onto his knees. Girlfriend, you've got this all wrong, mister. Ino yelled indignantly, red all over her body. Oh, then, pray tell, why are you so red, young miss? Jiraiya asked with a perverted giggle. I'm tired, okay. We just spent 10 minutes running away from Guy-sensei. This seemed to shock the Toad Sannin. 10 minutes? Really? That must be some kind of record. Veteran shinobi can't usually hide from him for more than 3 or 4 minutes. How'd you do it? Kage Bunshin. Naruto supplied, finally recomposing himself. Well, Gaki, now that you're coherent again, care to introduce me to this fine young woman? Naruto immediately glared and threw up his arms in an X symbol. Hell no, you don't need to know a thing about her. Naruto shouted, barely stopping himself from calling the perverted man a pedophile. Ino was only 12 for Kami's sake. Jiraiya didn't even bat an eye at Naruto's protests. My, well, aren't you protective? Maybe you do have a thing for her, Ino and Naruto's faces reddened and Jiraiya fell backwards laughing. Ino finally decided that she had enough. Hey, Whiskers, who is this creep? She whispered. Whiskers. Jiraiya cried out, leaving the blondes to wonder just how acute the old ninja's hearing must be. You've already given him a pet name. Ha. His laughter dying down, Jiraiya stood to his full height on the building's roof and looked down towards the 2 blondes. As for who I am, young lady, I am greatness incarnate. Women want to be with me, men want to be me, my works of literature are known throughout and far beyond the elemental countries, I have been known by many names, most still uttered with fear and awe. I am the brave, gallant, sincere, honorable, humble, amazing, in bed, Jiraiya mentally added, and all-around awesome toad sage of MT. Myoboku, Jiraiya of the Sannin. More like Ero Baka of the Sannin. Naruto grumbled immediately, not fazed in the slightest by the corny introduction. Ino giggled at Naruto's joke, a welcome distraction from the eye-burning horribleness of the dance that went along with the introduction. Nice to see that you got rid of the confetti though, Ero Sennin. Naruto said louder, causing Jiraiya to frown deeper and Ino to outright laugh. Alright then, enough playing around, I guess. Let's get back on topic, shall we? Naruto, why was Guy looking for you? Jiraiya asked, scratching his nose with his pinky. I don't know. He just yelled my name and came running after me. You know how he is, I had no choice but to run. Well then, if he's only looking for you, why is she hiding out too? Jiraiya asked, pointing towards Ino. Ino processed this for a minute before her brain came out with an appropriate answer. You're right, I just got caught up in everything, I guess. The smart thing to do would be to just go. Naruto glanced away, that new feeling of abandonment beginning to creep back in. But I can't just leave Naruto now while he's in trouble. What kind of a friend would that make me? Naruto's eyes widened and he turned to look at Ino, who was grinning at him with a confident look in her eyes. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow and gave Ino a deeper look than before. Despite himself, he had to admit that he was impressed by the blonde girl. It's not as though she knows anything about the fox, but Naruto doesn't have the best reputation. Plus, if that pink-haired girl is anything to go on, he's not a real charmer, which makes this situation very interesting. The toad Sanin was just about to reach for his notepad when a new voice stopped him cold. Finally found you, Uzumaki. The three people turned as one to look down the empty street at Neji Hyuga. And you're with the Yamanaka. I knew you were just using Tenten. Wait, what? Naruto shouted, confused by Neji's words while Jiraiya was hastily looking for his good pen. Ino looked back and forth between the two boys before standing and putting herself in between them. Seeing as how Neji was a good 20 feet away, this was a fairly easy thing to do. Hold on, what the hell is going on here? Who's using who? Stay out of this, Yamanaka, this doesn't concern you. This is between me and this filth. Whoa now, that's a bit harsh. Wonder what Naruto did, and I really hope Tenten is a girl, otherwise many of my plans for the Gaki will be flushed down the toilet. Hey, you can't talk to him like that. Ino shouted at the Hyuga boy and started to advance on him until Naruto somehow got in front of her and blocked her path. It's alright, Ino, you don't have to defend me. Neji is just pissed off about something, no big. But Naruto, listen, it's fine, let me handle this, okay? More emotions than Naruto could count ran across Ino's face before she shouted in frustration and backed off. Boys, she muttered as she leaned against a wall. Good, now I can beat you without interference. Neji said coldly. Wait, you said something about me using Tenten earlier, what did that mean? Oh, don't start playing into stereotypes now, Blondie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You pulled Tenten along in your little game and now I'm going to right that wrong. Listen, I have no idea what you're talking about, but you obviously want to fight. I'll just beat you like last time. By some unspoken signal, Neji and Naruto charged forward and met almost instantly in the middle of the street, fists flying. Naruto punched at Neji's head, barely missing as the Hyuga dodged to the outside, throwing the blonde off balance for a critical moment. Neji capitalized and swooped in behind Naruto, however he failed to realize that Naruto purposely overshot the punch so he could twist his body around and kick Neji in the head with the back of his foot. Neji stumbled backwards and grasped at his head, his eyes refocusing on Naruto just in time to see him and a clone rushing forward. Groggily he performed a double palm thrust and was lucky enough to catch them in it, only for them to poof into white smoke. Realization struck and Neji turned around in time to saw Naruto launch a giant shuriken at him. Neji easily ducked underneath it only for it to poof and transform into Naruto, who crashed his fist into the back of Neji's head, bringing him down onto the floor, no doubt with a serious concussion. Ha, see, I told you I'd beat you again. Naruto announced victoriously. Don't get Kosi Gaki. Jiraiya called from above, enjoying the show immensely. Naruto was actually fighting smarter against the Hyuga this time around and was winning. There was one big reason for that, however. What do you mean, Arrow Sennin? Just as Naruto asked though, Neji began to stir on the floor. Groaning, the Hyuga shook his head and turned towards Naruto, his Byakugan now active. Oh, Neji pushed himself onto his feet, growling towards the blonde idiot. As soon as he was completely on his feet, he was gone in a blur. He raced forward and struck all over Naruto's arms and torso. Naruto felt his tenketsu close and several of his muscles tear at Neji's fingertips. Finally he was able to maneuver himself away from the mad Hyuga, only to crumple down onto his knees from the extra weight of his now useless upper body. Having no other choice, he let out the smallest bit of fox chakra he could to painfully reopen his tenketsu and get him back in the fight. Neji, having recognized the red glow Naruto was beginning to be surrounded by from their last fight, didn't give Naruto the time he needed. He closed the gap in a second and smiled as he began to spin. Kaden, Neji cried out as his chakra rotated and struck Naruto, sending him crashing against a wall. Neji came forward for another shot, but Naruto quickly got his bearings back and flipped onto the wall he was pressed up against. He backpedaled up the wall to the building's roof and stared down at Neji, who didn't want to risk a vertical encounter. Ino was just staring curiously at Naruto's glowing body while Jiraiya was ready to jump in if Naruto lost control. Seeing Naruto's attempt to buy time, Neji decided to rile up the blonde idiot. Fate smiled upon you one time, Uzumaki, and it was a false smile. Did you think you beat me with skill? No, it was luck and trickery. Fate knew that me winning then would not have broken your spirit as much as showing you how pathetic you really are by taking that win back. No matter what, you are a loser and will always be a loser. That is why I will win this. I'm tired of your bullshit. Naruto shouted as he pumped himself up with more of the fox's chakra, giving him a blazing red aura as opposed to the soft glow of before. He shimmered out of existence too fast for Ino or Neji to see, However, Jiraiya's eyes tracked the blonde's hectic movements as Naruto leapt and bound all around the Hyuga. Neji was a bit confused at first as small dents in the building's walls were appearing all around him, his Byakugan unable to track Naruto until the last moment when the blonde appeared directly behind him, Neji's hair in one hand and a kunai in the other, and a triumphant look in Naruto's eyes. Neji blanched. Kai. Naruto sliced with one swift motion and more than half of Neji's long hair was sliced off, leaving it barely shoulder length. 10. Neji finished too late and Naruto gladly let the force of the blow send him from Neji's immediate strike zone. Almost disbelievingly Neji felt for his hair before he nearly broke down. His wonderful hair, traditionally worn long, was gone. Cut off by Naruto Uzumaki. That is it. Neji seethed, the excess chakra he was putting into his hands making them glow white. Naruto stopped waving the piece of hair he had in his hand mockingly and took a step back. Neji began to slow spin forward, switching from one foot to the other almost like a ballerina. Suddenly, when he reached halfway to Naruto, his spinning increased dramatically and what appeared to be a twister made of chakra was advancing straight towards Naruto. Naruto and Ino were slightly shocked by the move, but Jiraiya was incredibly impressed. The major flaw that the Kaiden has always had was that it's a defensive move. It has the power for a devastating offensive move but lacks the mobility. Neji truly is a genius to have broken off the set path for the Kaiden and mobilize it like this, however I doubt he realizes that there is a reason the Kaiden is taught as a stationary defensive move only. But kids always think they're the first to try something, so he probably doesn't even know how this will blow up in his face. Literally. Naruto glared at Neji's incoming attack before breaking into a small mischievous smile. He cracked his fingers and created a clone, his hand extending. You want to spin, Neji? That's fine with me. I just hope you don't mind when you see my spin on things. A low whirring sound started up as Naruto and his clone focused their chakra. A small rotating ball of death appeared in Naruto's right hand and he smiled as Neji was almost upon him. Come on Uaz, come get some. Rasengan. Jiraiya groaned as he knew what was going to happen. Just as the Rasengan touched Neji's outmost layer of spinning chakra, Neji's attack exploded. With Neji's movement, the chakra construct was unstable and exploded at the slightest connection to opposing force. Without the stability of a solid, orb-like shape, the rotation of the Kaiden, while powerful, is suited for nothing more than kamikaze warfare. Luckily for Neji, his chakra is not yet potent enough to kill, even if detonated. When both boys were caught in the explosion, their bodies failed them and they went unconscious. Naruto's body got sent high into the air while Neji's body was blasted backwards where he hit the ground, making his body bounce down the street before rolling to a stop. As Naruto's body began to arc back down, Ino ran forward, hoping to catch the boy before he hit the ground, but just as he was passing the roof of the building, a long tongue lashed out and wrapped itself around his body. Ino was shocked and looked right at Jiraiya, who was now standing on the toad that had Naruto. Hey, don't eat him, Ino shouted as she began running up the building. Eat him, Jiraiya shouted indignantly. I just saved him. The Gaki passed out, and no offense but I doubt even if you braced yourself with chakra that you wouldn't be crushed when you caught him. Ino stopped and bit her bottom lip before deciding that the old man was right. She then looked over to where Neji was sprawled out on the street. What should we do with him? She asked. Well, we can't just leave him there. We should probably take them over to the hospital. Here, hop on. Jiraiya patted the back of the toad and Ino grudgingly got on. They hopped down to the street and Jiraiya was retrieving Neji just as Guy rounded the street corner. Gah, Neji. And Naruto. How could this have happened? Of course. You must be an imposter. The real master Jiraiya would never harm his or mine own pupil. And what's this? A young kunoichi obviously on that toad against her will. Villain, I shall show you the wrath of Konoha. Guy charged at Jiraiya with a supreme youthful vengeance of overpowering youth. Tattoo magically appearing on his forehead. Jiraiya quickly turned and ran back to the toad, barely able to throw Neji on before Guy grabbed Jiraiya's shoulder, pulling him back. Jiraiya kicked Guy away into the other street and turned back to the toad. To the hospital. Take the kids there and listen to whatever Miss Yamanaka tells you. Jiraiya cried before Guy tackled him to the ground. Ino watched the bizarre sight for only a few moments before she snapped back to reality and slapped the toad. Go frog. You heard him. To the hospital. And with a leap the three were off. A tall, breathtaking woman rushed out of her job and ran as fast as she could over towards Pleasureful. She had heard from a coworker that there had been some fights going on there, and someone swore they saw him there. When she got onto the scene, whatever fights that might have happened there were already long over. Still she looked around for any sign of the boy, worried out of her mind. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. She wailed internally as she spotted some blood on the ground as well as scorch marks from an obvious explosion. Why were you fighting here? What could have happened? Did you get hurt? Where are you now? Hey, why did you run out so quickly, girl? You've barely been working 2 hours and you can't risk anything right now, you know that. Do you want to get fired? A voice said behind her. Turning around, she saw her friend Akari in her work uniform, nearly transparent lingerie. She didn't bat an eye at her friend's lack of concern for being half-gnawed in the open streets. It was still early and these streets didn't start to get busy until night fell. Sighing, she cast one more glance towards the scene of the fight before walking back towards work, Akari right next to her. It's my Ototo. I heard he was fighting over here and I just had to check. I was worried, all right. Akari grimaced and shrugged her shoulders. Listen, I know you worry a lot and never wanted him to be a ninja, but you have to understand that he can take care of himself. Remember when Odo attacked during the Chunin exams? You couldn't get the day off even though you begged so that you could go support him, so you didn't see him fight, but I did. That boy is strong. And I know you'll never stop worrying, but how do you think you'd make him feel if his big sister lost his job because she ran out of work to look for him? You know the boss wants to fire you just because you treat him like a person. That damn bastard. If it wasn't so hard to get work, I would quit just so I could beat him upside his head. She fumed as they neared their building. But you are right, despite what I would say, he would just blame himself. She slowed down and stopped walking, just staring down at the ground, Akari staring at her. I barely see him at all anymore. My hours keep me from being the support he needs and he's always going off on missions now. He started using my first name too whenever he sees me. He's growing up and I'm still stuck in the red light district. But you can't blame yourself for that, Akari exclaimed, gripping her friend's shoulder. Yes, you've missed out on some parts, but he's still growing and you're still there for him more than anyone else. Who's worked away on double shifts for years so that he would have a decent place to live? You. Who has been by his bedside whenever he's been taken to the hospital? You. Who has filled in for every meeting he's ever had with a teacher who was just out to get him? You. Who has taken him away and protected him for every one of his birthdays since he was 6? Who the hell changed their own name and even got tattoos so that you two could feel more like a real brother and sister? You. The woman began to cry, rubbing at her eyes and barely controlling her breathing. Did you know that he started to call that man his big brother figure? She asked, barely holding in her sudden contempt she was feeling at the mere thought of that man. Did you know that ever since he became a ninja, he's been putting aside the same amount of money you pay for his bills so that he could give it all back to you? I talked to him, not 2 months ago. He says he wants to help you now that he's making money too. Says that combined, you could stop having to work here. He misses you, a lot, and tries to lessen the pain by adding more nei-chans. But it isn't the same. He's never stopped loving you, never stopped hoping and wishing, and he's never once blamed you. The woman began shaking, tears streaming down her face at this revelation. Akari gently moved forward and hugged her friend as the younger woman practically wailed. After a few minutes she patted her back and started leading her back towards work. Come on Naru, we have to hurry back. The girls are covering for us, but that doesn't mean we should take too long. Then after work you can go and visit him and have a nice long talk about all this. Does that sound good? Gently smiling at the thought of being able to visit her little brother, Naru wiped at her eyes one last time, revealing their clear blueness. She nodded vigorously, her sun-blonde hair that was done in 2 pigtails waving with the motion. The soft smile turned into a toothy grin, reminiscent of her Ototo's foxy one, causing her whiskered cheeks to puff out a bit. Naru Kamen, big sister to Naruto Uzumaki, could not wait for work to end. By the way, I heard some interesting rumors about your brother from the other girls. Wanna hear them? Sakura was exhausted. Not physically, she had hardly done anything at all that day. No, she was exhausted emotionally. After having to explain herself to the new Hokage, she waited for her new sensei to wake up, and once she did, she was immediately thrust into a wild gauntlet of mental exercises and performance reviews to see if she would pass Shizune's sudden standards for an apprentice. After a while, Sakura thought she had gotten a reprieve with their break for dinner, but that was interrupted when Shizune was summoned to check on Naruto as she was his primary doctor. Sakura was forced to go along so she can get an in-depth look at the work she would be doing soon. Once there, however, Sakura was surprised to find Ino waiting in Naruto's room. What followed was the chewing out of the lifetime as Ino just blew up in lectures and scoldings and, "How dare you?" Honestly, Tsunade was nothing compared to Ino in this rare instance, and Sakura couldn't really handle it. So she fainted. After waking up, she and Ino had a much calmer talk and the blonde girl apologized for wrongfully accusing the girl of something she actually didn't do. She did, however, say that Sakura was going to have to talk to Naruto and sort things out amongst themselves, that they needed to work it out for their friendship. Sakura hesitantly agreed, and before she knew it, she was out and on the streets of Konoha, heading to the Yamanaka flower shop to deliver a message for Ino before heading home. She turned a corner and saw across the street from her, a bun-haired girl in a pink shirt come out of a convenience store with some groceries. Oh no, Sakura thought worriedly as she tried to blend in with the other nightlife on the street, impossible to do unless she was at a magical girl convention. Those chicks have some weird hair colors. Rainbow. And I guess a rave isn't out of the question either, and avoid the girl. Please, please, I don't want to be yelled at again today. I can't take much more. Please don't see me. Please don't see me. Please don't see me. Please don't see me. Sakura hurried down the way she came, deciding to take the long way back home. Once she was off of that street, she practically bolted away and ran down other streets until she was sure she wouldn't run into Tenten. Sighing at her cowardice, she remembered that she had to deliver Ino's message. With a groan, she turned around and screamed as Tenten's face was centimeters away from her own, an angry glare pointed right at her. You're that girl that left Naruto in alone out there. You pathetic little bitch. How could you do something like that to him? Sakura took step back from Tenten, who looked like she was gearing up for an attack. Then something in her snapped. She was tired of being yelled at. Tired of being in the wrong. Tired of the thought that she hurt Naruto so much. She was tired of running, being weak, and not standing up for herself. So it came as a great surprise to Tenten when Sakura gained a glint in her eyes and moved forward to meet her glare. Well, what the hell do you know? Nothing. I didn't want to leave him out there alone. I didn't abandon him for Sasuke. Fuck what Sasuke said or what you think or even what Naruto saw. I wanted to help him, I did, but I couldn't. So I went to find someone who could. And yes, I fucked up too because I didn't follow through on that, but damn it, I'm getting help on that so something like that never happens again. So shut the fuck up, go away, and let me make things right. Got it. Tenten was rendered speechless from the Pinket's proclamation and wasn't even able to get another word out before Sakura moved right on past her, raising a finger into the air behind her. And by the way, bitch, I guess I should let you know. Naruto and your teammate are in the hospital right now. Apparently your friend Neji blew the both of them up. Have a fucking great night. Naruto gasped awake and looked around himself wildly. He was able to see another bed and a window along with some chairs. He was able to see the night sky but little else, though from the smell and arrangement of the room he could tell he was back in the hospital. With a sigh, Naruto turned from the window and nearly screamed as he saw a female figure in one of the chairs close to his bed. Eyes wide and a hand clasped over his mouth, Naruto checked over the figure for a moment before visibly relaxing. It was only Ino, knocked out cold on the chair. Naruto let out breath he didn't even know he was holding before he was struck by a thought. Why had he acted like that at the thought of some girl sleeping close to him? Shaking his head, Naruto decided to close his eyes and go back to sleep. Thoughts of waking up with his sister waiting by his hospital bed, heading out to Ichiraku's and talking with Ayame again, and maybe when the day was over he'd get to see one of her flowers float down to his window. Then he'd jump on out his window and climb the fire escape up to his rooftop, and he'd say hi, and she'd say hey, then they would both plop onto their backs and look at the stars and talk until they were fighting to stay awake. Then she would yawn and tell him to close his eyes, and even though he knew what she would do he would close them anyways, an eager smile on his lips. She'd shuffle around and tell him to look and he'd smile as he saw some leftover cake, or some slightly melted ice cream, or any number of sweet treats that she was able to sneak out of her home to share with him. And they'd spend the rest of their time together in a happy silence before they said their goodbyes. Then she would sneak down to her third-floor bedroom window, and he'd watch to make sure her mom hadn't been waiting up for her drunk as hell. Then when he was sure she was safe in bed he'd climb down back into his own room and sleep whatever was left of the night away. And with those comforting thoughts he fell asleep to pleasant dreams. Naruto was swinging alone after class at the Ninja Academy, goggles covering his eyes to hide the tears the 9-year-old was shedding. He had nothing going for him at the moment. Sakura hadn't paid any attention to him, Ayame was on a field trip with her civilian school, Naru didn't have a day off until Saturday, something he was grateful for on said day but whined about when it wasn't, and even the Hokage would be swamped with paperwork at this time. There was just no one who he could stave off the loneliness with. Suddenly he heard some wild shuffling and a girl around his age burst out from the bushes directly behind his tree. Naruto blinked at her, confused as to why she looked so scared and out of breath. Then he heard it, that sickly sweet tone of voice that just dripped with hidden intentions. Except this time it wasn't him the voice was calling out for. "Oh Kusari, come out wherever you are. Come on, we just want to play. How about we play doctor? I have the scalpels." The girl grew even paler than she was and she started to cry as she looked for somewhere to go. Unable to stand by and do nothing, Naruto hopped off of the swing and grabbed the girl's arm, dragging her towards the tree swing. The girl was hyperventilating at this point but Naruto ignored that and began climbing the swing's rope one-handed, dragging the girl up and onto the tree. They hid in the relative safety of the tree's leaves while 3 mean-looking girls came around and looked for the girl sitting next to Naruto. After a while the girls left and the girl began to fidget wildly again, that scared look coming back into her eyes. "Hey, are you okay?" Naruto asked the girl, a little freaked out. The girl only looked at him with a frightened expression, and it was then that Naruto actually paid attention to how she looked. She was a petite girl, just barely shorter than him, with a pretty face and big purple eyes. She had pink hair, but not the bright pink that his crush had. It was more like a soft, pale pink than anything else, and unlike his crush's straight hair hers was wavy as it framed her face and went a little past her neck. She was wearing a white school uniform like those other 3 girls showing that she was a student at Konoha's illustrious and expensive private academy. Finally she had on a blue neckerchief that she wore around her neck rather than under her collar, which Naruto was surprised to notice, hid several red splotchy bruises. "Who did that to you?" Naruto asked softly, careful to not try and sound accusing. If she had suffered like he thought she had then he knew exactly how being hounded for answers would feel. The girl only gasped and whimpered drawing more into herself in an attempt to hide her bruises. Unfortunately doing this caused her to lose her balance and she slipped off of the tree branch with a scream. Before she even fell completely off the branch Naruto was in motion, throwing himself towards the girl. He reached out and grabbed one of her hands with his left hand and the swing rope with his right, breaking their fall. Grunting he swung his left arm around and let go, making the girl land firmly on the swing. At that moment though the rope snapped from the impact and the girl fell onto her butt as Naruto fell onto his face from about 6 feet up. It took the girl a moment to realize that she was safe on the ground before she looked over towards the boy that saved her. Gasping at the sight of him the girl crawled over on her hands and knees to see if he was still alive. As she reached a hand out, Naruto sprung up off the ground and gripped his nose in pain. "Ow, ow, 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 ow. It hurts," he groaned out. The girl who had fallen backwards onto her bottom when Naruto sprung up was now just staring at him in amazement. "Ow," Naruto moaned before he turned and noticed her. "Oh, hey you're okay. Awesome, I was worried I wouldn't make it to you in time." The girl gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. You were worried about me?" she asked. Naruto tilted his head a bit confused. "Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't want you to fall and get hurt." The girl gasped again before and started shaking a bit. She lowered her gaze onto her hands which were wringing the bottom of her long uniform skirt. "You didn't want me to get hurt." Naruto was beginning to think that the girl was weird before he remembered seeing those bruises on her neck. He suddenly understood that like him, this girl must not have been treated very well. Not very well at all. And the way she was shaking, the nervousness of her hands, he had seen it all in himself before. She was scared, and alone, and she probably didn't think that anyone even understood what she was going through. But Naruto knew what she was going through. He knew, and he knew what she needed more than anything else in the world at that moment, the thing that his sister always did when he was scared to make him feel better. So without another word Naruto shuffled over and gave the girl a hug. She was stiff, unused to this kind of contact and was first afraid that this was some new kind of way to hurt someone. But then a warmth started to come over her, and she welcomed the hug before crashing her whole body into Naruto's, desperate for more contact. She had never felt something so good before, and even though it freaked Naruto out a bit, he didn't let go until she pulled away. A huge smile now on her face. Hey, glad to see you're finally smiling, Naruto said happily. And you probably don't wanna talk, but I just wanna let you know that I get her too. And that you're not alone, cause now you've got me, and no matter what I'll be there whenever you need a hug or something, since that always makes me feel better. Oh, my name's Naruto, by the way, Uzumaki Naruto. He finished with a wide smile and waited for the girl to introduce herself. She seemed hesitant at first, very shy and unsure of herself. But then she stood up and bowed. Hi Uzumaki-kun, I'm Hana, Yukari Hana. She rose back up and smiled sweetly at him, and so a brilliant friendship was created. But, wait, the dream was still going. Repressed memories resurfacing about that day and what happened immediately after she introduced herself. Memories that Naruto had long ago consciously forgotten, so as to save his friendship and sanity. A blush began to cover Hana's face as she clasped her hands together and placed them in front of her, waiting patiently for Naruto to stand up too. Once he was up, he blinked a bit at the look of happiness on her face, and it was then that he first noticed the bags under her big, now sparkling eyes. How many children would you like to have? She asked him, lost in bliss. Naruto only stared at her, although a small tingle went down his spine as she took in a deep breath. I want to have 3 children, 2 girls and 1 boy. Uzumaki-kun, you can name them because I don't have a good naming sense. Hey, who do you think they will look more like? They are our children, so they'll definitely be cute, right? Then we will live in a white house with a garden and keep a big doggy. At least let me decide on the doggy's name. Uzumaki-kun, do you like cats or dogs? I like dogs, but if you insist, we can keep a cat instead. I love dogs, but if it's an animal, I'll love it regardless. But after all, I love Uzumaki-kun the best. I hope Uzumaki-kun loves me the best too. Oh, what kind of food do you like? Why did I ask that question? Oh, come on Uzumaki-kun, it's 'cause I will be the one cooking your lunch for you starting tomorrow morning, right? Speaking of which, starting from tomorrow till death, everything you eat will be cooked by me, so I must know your taste. Being picky isn't good, but I want you to be happy, so I want to cook for you all your favorite foods from the beginning. You don't need to be appreciative because it's obvious for a girl to cook for her boyfriend. But promise me one thing. I've always wanted to try saying, ah, while feeding someone, so during tomorrow's lunch let me say, ah, okay. Please don't be shy and run away, okay? If you do so I will feel depressed, seriously. I might end up killing Uzumaki-kun. Just kidding. And Uzumaki-kun, please don't get mad. I've fallen for a boy at school. No, of course I'm not going to cheat on you, 'cause there is no other boy I could love like Uzumaki-kun. I just want to tell you that before you guys meet each other, so that you know there was nothing between us. Now that I think about it, that guy was a jerk. I haven't talked with him and I really feel glad that I didn't. But I thought I should talk about this from the beginning in order to prevent any misunderstandings, right? Misunderstandings are very sorrowful, right? 2 people might love each other, but if they have misunderstandings and then quarrel and then part ways, then it'd be lust like a book's drama, and book dramas are already heartbreaking enough, right? Uzumaki-kun and I can definitely make up afterward, right? Ah, then, till now have you loved any other girl? There's no other way you could love other girls, right? But there must have been at least one girl you were interested in, right? Don't worry, I won't blame you for that. Actually, I won't really like it, but I will endure it because that was from before we met each other, right? Now that Uzumaki-kun has met me, for you other girls are obviously just akin to rocks, right? I feel sorry for them that I'm taking Uzumaki-kun for myself, but there is no choice, love is like that. It's destiny that Uzumaki-kun chose me over them. I must become happy in their stead as well. But once in a while, you can go play with them because I'll be sorry if I'm to only one who is happy. You think so too, don't you? Naruto stared at Hana for a few moments, extremely weirded out by the girl. His mind was blank, he couldn't fathom the depth of everything he had just been told. Or rather, he just didn't know how to react to such a thing. Finally, 6 words left his mouth that basically saved him. Aren't we too young for that? Hana stared at Naruto, her smile and blush still consuming her face. She didn't seem to have reacted physically to the question at all. Really? Oh, well, since I love Uzumaki-kun so much and I'm sure Uzumaki-kun loves me as much too, then I can wait until Uzumaki-kun decides to propose to me. You will propose to me, Uzumaki-kun, right? After all, Uzumaki-kun was born to love me and take me away from all the pain and knives and shouting and, well, Uzumaki-kun doesn't want to hear about that. Besides, we can always spend time together and do fun things cause Uzumaki-kun is kind like that. But you promised to propose, Uzumaki-kun, so don't forget, but you won't forget, right? Naruto couldn't do anything but gulp and nod for a while, but he was eventually able to talk again. Yeah, that's right. After a little while, Hannah realized that she had to hurry home or her mom would start to get scary, so she practically begged Naruto to walk her home. As they walked, Naruto began to notice how the streets looked familiar and started to get worried. Then when they reached her home, Naruto's eyes widened. They lived in the same apartment complex. After some rushed goodbyes, all Naruto could do was walk into his home, plop onto his bed, and try to forget the crazy girl. He was only half successful. He felt a need to do good for her, so his mind only repressed the memories of her crazy acts, leaving in place Naruto's rescue of the girl and his promise to be there for her. The rest, as they say, is history. Still, his presumed promise to propose to her never came up again, and with a girl that crazy it definitely would, wouldn't it? Plus she had mellowed out a lot since they started their friendship. She wasn't that girl anymore, right? Tenten slumped into her apartment, walked into her room, and crashed onto her bed completely exhausted. Flashback. After her run-in with Sakura, she had rushed home to put away her groceries before rushing right back out towards the hospital. Once she was there, she was, of course, denied entrance because visiting hours were over. Still, two of her friends were in that hospital, and she would be damned before she made every effort she could to see them. Besides, she was a ninja. How hard would sneaking into a hospital be? Tenten got her answer after 3 intense hours of trying to sneak in, getting caught, fighting off forceful ejection from the premises, then starting the cycle again. It was a hospital that catered specifically to ninja, and they had to have some intense security in case whatever or whoever put them in there decided they wanted to finish the job. So, physically and mentally exhausted, Tenten somehow found herself lucky enough to sneak into the correct hallway that Naruto and Neji's room was in. However, she soon discovered that she wasn't alone in the hallway. Saw some real potential there today, plus the kid needs an attitude adjustment. He's too dark right now for what I have planned. Tenten heard a man's voice say. She couldn't quite place it, but its owner sounded familiar. She then heard a woman's sigh and a shuffling that could have been her leaning against a door or wall. Then Tenten gasped as she recognized the voice of her idol. I know, you're right, Jiraiya, but I still don't exactly like your idea much. Naruto's been hurt so badly that. Oh, I know that, but you can't treat him like a helpless baby. Besides, this most recent case of him in the hospital was just a simple fight over a girl. Or at least a misunderstanding involving aforementioned girl. Tenten raised an eyebrow and scooted closer to the voices to try and listen in more. What do you mean? The Hyuga likes the blondie Naruto was with? Tsunade asked. No, Naruto, likes the blonde and, one again I think, she likes him too, but, and here's the best part, Naruto was with this other girl named Tenten. Yes, I know. I met her yesterday and have been hearing all the rumors about the two. I think it's really sweet. Tsunade said with a smile and proud look in her eyes. Rumors schmoomers, I know what I saw. No heard, but saw. Jiraiya emphasized. Tenten blinked in surprise. There were rumors about her and Naruto. Just, great. Now Neji would never. The Hyuga was so totally jealous anyways. He stormed up to Naruto and started ranting about how Naruto was using the Tenten girl and that he was there to make him pay. It was all pretty good actually, I even took so notes. Wanna see? Immediately after, Jiraiya let out a yelp of pain and Tsunade growled in annoyance. Please don't tell me that you're planning on using them to get good material for those perverted books of yours. Of course not, Jiraiya exclaimed, trying his best to look insulted. It wasn't very convincing, though if that happens to be an amusing side effect, who am I to deny potential readers an interesting story? Tsunade's growling became much more audible and Jiraiya seemed to start whimpering his terror. Tenten's curiosity got the better of her and she scooted even more down the hall. As soon as she moved, however, Tsunade and Jiraiya stopped making noise. Tenten waited in a tense silence for about 20 seconds, fearing that she had been caught, only to suppress a sigh of relief when Tsunade started talking again. Alright, I guess I can see how this could help Naruto, but why did now? Why can't we just wait for? No, it has to be now, while everything is still raw and fresh. If we wait too long, there's no telling what could happen to them. Fine, have it your way, like always. Don't even think about how I or anyone else will feel about this. I guess all that really does matter to you, the only thing that's ever really mattered to you is finding that damn kid. There was a tense moment of silence before Jiraiya spoke up again. You know that's not. Now is not the time for this. I'll get the paperwork all drawn up and make the announcement tomorrow. Be there for that. Good night, Jiraiya. As the sound of footsteps began to get closer, Tenten rushed away as sneakily as possible, not exactly sure what to think of all this. Flashback end. What should I do? There's so much I can do with that information, I just need to think what. Tenten rolled over in her bed to stare at the ceiling. There seemed to rumors going around about her and Naruto. Tenten scowled a bit. Those rumors must have started after that brief run-in with Hinata. There were a lot of people around them at that time. She was actually surprised that she didn't expect rumors to pop up. They did, however, provide her with a unique bit of information. Neji was jealous of Naruto for being with her. She couldn't believe that all it took to get Neji's attention was to seem like she was dating another boy. Tenten nearly squealed in joy but sat up in her bed instead, pondering how best to go about this. Neji's recent behavior towards Naruto all stems from him not wanting to date me. He doesn't want Naruto to date me because he secretly likes me, he just won't admit it. So I need to put him in a tougher position to get Neji to finally spill his guts. After all, if he was trying to cook lunch for me after one day, imagine what he would do if I were dating Naruto for a week. Tenten's fist pumped into the air half-heartedly as she thought of something. Date Naruto? I'm not dating Naruto. I can't believe I overlooked that, but Neji will only, if I maybe, damn it. I don't want to do that. I can't do that to Naruto, that would make me such a heartless bitch. And Naruto doesn't deserve something like that. Tenten flopped back down onto her bed and buried her face in her pillow. Besides, I don't even know if Naruto is going to be here for much longer. From the sound of it, Jiraiya of the Sannin had something planned for him, and that probably meant some kind of intense, far-away training or something. And we just became friends too. Well, all I can do is wish the best for him. Tenten smiled to herself, glad to have taken the high road and not use Naruto like some tool to get Neji. As she drifted off to sleep though, she couldn't help but wonder, just what would it be like if she were to date Naruto? Ayame was a bit disheartened. That was the best way to describe her feelings at the moment. After the dinner rush was over and Naruto still hadn't shown up, Ayame begged her dad to let her have the rest of the night off. Tsuki agreed, not realizing that his daughter had other motives than just not having to work. Once she was done packing up a delivery bag full of her special love potion ramen, she hustled over to Naruto's home, hoping to surprise him. It was still relatively early, it only being 9 at night, so he wouldn't have a problem eating this late. Not that he would have a problem eating ramen at all, but Ayame didn't want to cause any problems with nighttime trips to the restroom. She really did care that much. She arrived maybe 10 minutes after leaving work, and stayed there for 2 hours. It looked like Naruto wasn't coming home anytime soon, and her love potion ramen was now dreadfully cold, the noodles no doubt soggy and crumbling. She felt like crying, she really did. After all this time, after finally telling herself to make a move, it felt like nothing was going right for her. Her father was going to close up the shop soon, and if he went home and didn't find her there, then she would be in a lot of trouble. So she decided to start heading back home, and just as she was standing up, the door at the end of the hallway opened up and someone came toward her, causing her to gasp. Hello, what are you doing here this late? A very feminine voice asked Ayame. Unfortunately, Ayame's voice was caught in her throat, so the woman just continued talking. Brown hair, nice big eyes, maybe a little older, has ramen and is wearing that uniform. You must be Ayame Ichiraku. The fact that the woman had a checklist that determined her identity didn't register with Ayame. All that she could focus on right now was the brilliant sunny blonde hair so like his, her blue eyes, and those whisker marks on her cheeks. You, who are you? How do you know me? You can't be Naruto-kun, he would have greeted me then barraged me with questions about the ramen. The older woman smiled and patted Ayame's head, peering to her side to look at the dark windows. I'm guessing he's not home, huh? And here you came in with his favorite food too. It's a shame, but this means he's probably in the hospital. But what are you doing here, Ayame-chan? Shouldn't you be home? It's kinda late after all. Ayame gripped the bag in front of her tighter and looked down, a red tint barely noticeable on her cheeks. Well, Naruto-kun didn't come in for lunch today. And I know he was here in the village because he usually tells me that he'll be leaving and because I've heard the rumors about him. Then when he didn't come in for dinner either, I figured that maybe he was just tired at home, so I came over with some ramen that he might like and, he isn't here. The woman nodded her head in understanding. She looked Ayame over a bit and smiled. Naruto talked about Ayame a lot, after all she was his first, everything really. She had heard all the stories, heard of all their adventures, and all the things that the two had done with each other. Her favorite was when Naruto and Ayame had ditched school, something she scolded Naruto for hours about, and went to the small park on top of the Hokage monument. The two had seen a couple kiss up there, and not seeing why not they decided to share a kiss too. They were only 8 and 9, but she always gushed at the story, and she had secretly always wanted Ayame and Naruto to get together. Ayame was perfect in her eyes. She was a humble civilian and Naruto's friend. She was smart, had a good work ethic, was always there for him with a listening ear or ready advice, she could cook Naruto's favorite food, and she was a proud little firecracker when she needed to be. Nodding to herself, Naru made a decision. From this point forward, she would give it her all to help Ayame win Naruto's heart. Those rumors she was hearing about that Tenten girl just wouldn't do at all, and she would be damned if that Hyuga girl got her evil hands on her precious little brother. She was done hiding in the shadows and out of sight from the village just because Naruto was afraid she'd get hurt if people knew about her. She wanted to proudly proclaim herself Naruto's older sister with her words, not just her actions. Her decision to tattoo whisker marks on her cheeks tended to be ignored by a great deal of the public for some reason. As if they were in denial about something. So she leaned down a bit and looked Ayame right in the eyes. Well, Ayame, since he's not here, that means he's probably in the hospital. So I'm sorry about you spending so much time waiting for him. As for whom I am, my name is Naru and Naruto is my Ototo. Not by blood, she quickly said as Ayame opened her mouth to interrupt. But despite that I love him as if he were my real brother. I've even tattooed these things onto my cheeks so we could be accepted as brother and sister more easily. And I know he hasn't mentioned me before, but that's because he was scared that if too many people found out about me, well, let me just say that some people would very likely try to keep us apart. Naru looked down at that statement and a frown passed over her face before she looked up again, a brilliant smile there now. Listen, I know you're in love with my dense little bother. You don't need to hide it, haha. And don't be embarrassed, he doesn't know a thing though, it's not like I haven't dropped enough hints or anything. Listen, the point is, I know how Naruto thinks, acts, and who he listens to. I'm the foremost expert on all things Naruto. And I want to help you get him. Ayame just stared at this strange woman who was claiming to be Naruto's adoptive older sister and was offering her help on how to get Naruto to fall in love with her. A part of her couldn't believe it, and tried to convince her that this was a trick. But then, another part of her believed the woman's words. And she began to think of all the things she could accomplish if Naruto's older sister was backing her personally. Ayame could imagine a lot. And she smiled at the woman. Well, what are we waiting for then, Nei-chan? Thanks for listening. In the next chapter, please leave a review, I would love to hear your feedback. Especially if it helps me improve the overall story.